Hello, Launch family. My name is Chris. This is Dare to Launch. And as always, I'm joined by my co host, Mr. Jeff Walker
Hey, everybody.
and Mr. Dan Walker.
Hey, hey.
And today we have a very special guest. He's an author, keynote speaker, and personal development leader who's best known for creating the Miracle Morning, which is a global movement built around intentional morning routines to help improve your life, productivity, mindset, health, and overall fulfillment. His books have sold millions of copies worldwide, and his latest book, The Miracle Morning After 50, just dropped. Hal Elrod, welcome to Dare to Launch.
Fellas, it is so good to be with you today.
I wanted to kick things off because I'm very familiar with your story, and because we go way back in the Cutco days. I know you used to sell knives, and listeners here know that that bring up my knife selling stories sometimes, so they know we go back that way. But I think there's probably a lot of people who maybe don't know, your life has been filled with miraculous moments. One of the core concepts I think that you teach or are inspiring people to see is that miracles are something that you can create. So I was wondering, when did you learn that you could create miracles in many ways?
I think first it's important to define a miracle, right? Because it's a very loaded word. And if you were to ask, 10 different people or 100 people, what's a miracle? You'd get a lot of different answers. And most of them are things that are out of our control, that we cannot explain, that we maybe have no agency over, that we pray for and hope for. And the type of miracle that we're talking about here is one that we can co-create. And it's through our effort and through our intention and through our dedication. And so for me, a miracle is simply an extraordinary result beyond the realm of what you believe is probable for you. And that word probable is important because everything's possible, but we don't pursue that which is possible in our life. We only pursue that which we believe there's some sort of probability that we can achieve it, right? If you were to give someone, hey, are you going to pursue a goal that you don't actually believe you can achieve, but it's possible? They go, well, no, I'm going to pursue the ones I believe are probable. So anyone that's achieved an extraordinary result by putting forth unwavering faith and extraordinary effort, that's the type of miracle that I'm talking about. And I think it really started when I was 20 years old. My car was hit head on by a drunk driver at 70 miles per hour. This was after I gave a speech at a Cutco conference, Chris, or a division meeting, which you would know what that means, right? For the Northern California division of Cutco. And that night, driving home in my brand new Ford Mustang, my car was hit head on by a drunk driver at 80 miles per hour. And my airbag exploded. I was knocked unconscious and I spun around. The car spun around and the car behind me crashed into my driver's side door at 70 miles per hour. And the entire left side of my body was crushed. I broke 11 bones from my eye socket down to my leg was broken in half and 11 bones in between. And I was found dead at the scene. My heart stopped. I was clinically dead for 6 minutes. I was in a coma for 6 days. I flatlined twice more in the coma. And when I came out of the coma, the doctor said I would never walk again and that I had permanent brain damage. And so that was like this, if anybody's listening or watching and they just, you put yourself in those shoes, like you come out of a coma, you find out that your arm was broken in 2 pieces, your elbow was shattered, your eye socket was shattered, your leg was broken in half, your pelvis was broken, you've got internal injuries, you have brain damage, and you're never going to walk again. And you have to okay, what does this mean? Like, how am I going to deal with this new unimaginable reality? And what came up for me is I'm going to maintain unwavering faith that I can walk again while I accept that I might not. It was holding both ideas at the same time. So the worst case scenario is I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life. I will be at peace with that if that's my reality because I can't change it. But I'm not going to accept that as the only option. I'm going to put all my energy and faith and visualization and, I'm going to affirm, I'm going to pray, I'm going to imagine that I could walk again. And it was 2 weeks after I came out of the coma, after the doctors told my parents I was in denial because I was so optimistic. They go, your son needs to accept that he's probably never going to walk again. And they came in with routine x-rays and they go, we don't know how to explain this, Hal, but your body in the last 3 weeks since the crash, you've healed and you can take your first step today in therapy. And even me as an optimist was thinking I was a year off from that. So that was like the first moment where I was like, wow, like doctor said I would never walk again, but I chose to maintain faith that it was possible and put energy every day into visualizing it and praying about it. And then it happened. Like, what else is possible that doctors or experts or anybody doesn't believe is possible. And then I started applying it to my business goals, my Cutco goals, and I started breaking company records and doing things that I had never done and that no one had ever done in the history of Cutco. And I ended up calling it the miracle equation. In fact, that is one of my books, The Miracle Equation, which is the 2 decisions that allow you to achieve tangible, measurable miracles in your life.
Well, I think the next question into that is like, what is the miracle equation? If you're going to give us that book and tell us, so what is it?
Well, and it's funny, we were deciding on the cover of the book. I literally wrote it on the cover. I was like, let's not even hide it inside. So it's unwavering faith plus extraordinary effort is what creates miracles. And I'll use an athlete, like a sports example. If you think about the world's greatest athletes, let's use the NBA as an example, right? So I was a big basketball fan growing up. Michael Jordan was my favorite player, right? As he was for anyone alive during that time, probably most of y'all on this call. So the average NBA player, who, by the way, is one of the best players in the world, but even the average NBA player, and this applies to everybody, the majority of us, our faith is dependent on our results, right? And you can replace the word faith with belief, either way. Belief, faith, whatever. So the average NBA player, if they get the ball and they go in before the game, just like we go in before a goal, and they're like, I'm feeling good tonight, we're going to win the championship, let's go. And then they get the ball and they shoot and they miss. What happens to their faith, right? It goes down. And they go, okay, all right, okay, it's just one bad shot, no big deal. They get the ball again. If they miss another one, their faith just plummets. And they might not take another shot the rest of the game. However, the best in the world, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, the LeBron James, I believe they live by the miracle equation. They maintain unwavering faith. They can take every shot that they can make every shot they take, regardless of how many they miss. And that's why you see some of the best players in the world. They'll miss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they keep wanting the ball because they have this internal belief, this faith that I'll make every shot I take. Even if they miss 20 in a row, they'll make the 21st. And that's why you see those rare players come alive in the fourth quarter after they completely botched the first 3. And they go, no, it doesn't matter that the first 3 quarters were terrible. Just like in our lives, if you're watching this, it doesn't matter what happened up until this point. It's your faith in the possibilities that will turn them into probabilities. And from that point, you go, that's how they win the championships in the fourth quarter at the buzzer, because they maintain unwavering faith and they put forth extraordinary effort regardless of their results along their way. That's the miracle equation. You can apply it. I've applied it to beating cancer, to taking my first step when I said never walk, and then to all sorts of business goals as well.
It applies to everything. Yeah, no, this is power. I've been busy scribbling notes down. Unwavering faith that I will walk again, while accepting that I might not. I mean, there's a real grace in that, and being able to hold those 2 beliefs at the same time.
You know, one question, maybe before you even get there, though. So I love that, and that's amazing. And for those of you who are not watching on video right now, like, Hal, if you hadn't told those stories, I never would have known you were in that sort of accident. Like, that's amazing, incredible recovery. So my question, though, is that there is also, I'm sure, a level of I don't know, what would you say, like, realism that probably has to be applied too. Because those folks like the Michael Jordans, they're taking every shot saying, yeah, I'm going to hit this shot. And if I miss it, that doesn't matter. That doesn't define me. I'm still capable of making all these great shots. But for them, there's definitely that underlying level of, like, they also know that they're spectacular. Like, so I'm wondering how you approach that, because at some level you have to be able to shoot, though, too. You know, it's not like somebody who's never held a basketball is going to go up there and be like, yep, I can take every shot I can make every shot I take in a pro NBA game. Like, there's obviously that. And obviously when you're in the hospital bed, it was, I am gonna walk again, but also maybe not this afternoon. There's that level of building up the capability to have that belief, I would imagine. Like, how do you balance those 2 sides of things?
Yeah, well, so Dan, I'll answer this in a couple of ways. First is the second decision of the miracle equation. So it's the subtitle of the book is the 2 decisions that move your biggest goals from impossible to probable to inevitable. And the extraordinary effort is the second decision, right? So again, if you look at a Michael Jordan, it's like they put extraordinary effort in, not just during the game, but in practice, day after day after day after day. That's how they prepared to be able to do what they did in the game. Now, I'll go back to my Cutco days, because this is where the miracle equation was born. I was trying to break, Chris is familiar with the term push period, and a push period was a 14-day, a 2-week period in a Cutco where it was a big sales contest, and everybody was competing and no one knew the totals of anybody else. So it was like you were just doing the best you could. And if you were trying to be number one or anywhere in the ranking, you didn't know what anyone else was selling. So you just had to go as big as you could. And I set a goal to be the first Cutco sales rep in history to have 3 $20,000 push periods in a row. And I had my first 2. And anytime you do that, it feels lucky. You're like, oh man, if I wouldn't have had that one appointment that bought that big set for their vacation home, the odds of that happening again are not very good. So there's always this fear and this self-doubt. And during the third push period, I was gearing up, okay, 14 days. I've done it before. I can do it again. And the day before the push period started, our manager said, hey, everybody, got an announcement. The hotel ended up having a double booking, and they had to move our conference back 4 days. So your push period is only 10 days long. And I went, no, that's like, what I mean, that's, 30 something %, like you're cutting that off. And it was already feeling next to impossible to do this in 14 days. And so that night I went home and I'm like, okay, should I just give up? Like there's no point, like this is impossible. And I remembered a quote that I had learned from a mentor of mine. This is a Jim Rohn philosophy. And he said, the purpose of a goal is not to hit the goal. The purpose of a goal is what it makes of you by giving it everything you have until the last possible moment, regardless of your results. And when I remembered that as I'm debating what to do for the push period, and I go, well, wait a minute. What if I change that? What if the goal is not the goal? What if the goal is to see what I'm capable of for 10 days, to be committed at a level that I've never been committed to anything in my life, and not be attached to the result? And so the reverse engineering, I begin going, okay, well, what decisions do I have to make today and every day for the next 10 days to make this? And that's actually where the miracle equation was coined. Like the walking is where I started thinking of miracles, but I thought this would be a miracle if I pulled this off. And I reverse engineered it. In this moment, I have to make 2 decisions. The number one thing that will prevent me from reaching this goal is if I give up the faith that I can anywhere in these 10 days. So I have to maintain unwavering faith no matter what my results are along the way. Okay. That's the first decision. And I wrote it down. I will commit to maintaining unwavering faith that I can sell $20,000 no matter what my results are along the way. So even if I'm nowhere near on track, I have to just keep maintaining faith by verbalizing it. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And the second decision, I realized if I give up the faith, the effort flies out the window, because you're like, well, that's what happens is we're motivated before we approach the goal. But as soon as we're not on track, we're like, we lose the drive, because it's like, what's the point? There's no way I'm going to reach the goal. So I realized I have to put forth extraordinary effort. And the way I defined extraordinary didn't mean working 80 hours a week. It meant I have to keep moving forward, making forward progress, even if I don't feel like it, even if I'm discouraged, right? So I go out and I'm going to break this down, because this is why it's called the miracle equation. So do the math. I had to sell $20,000 in 10 days. That's how much per day?
2,000.
All right. You guys are all good. So $2,000 per day, right? So the way the Cutco world worked is you turned your orders in every week. So after the first week, 7 days, I needed to be at $14,000 to be on track. I was at $7,000. And I went into the office and I turned in my orders, and my manager, Frank, he said, Hal, hey man, how you doing on your 20? I know you're going big, man. How you doing? I'm like, man, I'm not even close. I'm 13 grand away and I have 3 days left. He goes, hey, that's okay, man. Why don't you lower your goal to 10,000? You can still achieve that. It's still a big push period. And I go, Frank, I don't think you understand. I am committed for 10 days, regardless of my results, to give it everything, unwavering faith and extraordinary effort to sell $20,000. It doesn't matter what my results are. I'm committed from the inside out. He goes, okay, all right, I'm not going to argue with you. And I go out there in the next 3 days and I sell $10,000. I'm at $17,000. The push period's essentially over. And I'm going, oh man, I'm so close. I call some customers. I get a few phone orders. Now it's like 9 at night. I run out of time. And then I go, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? This is the extraordinary effort, right? And I call Frank. I go, Frank, hey, I know we're supposed to meet at the office tomorrow at 8 a.m. for the bus ride. I said, if you'll let me, I could squeeze in 2 appointments tomorrow morning if I can meet you at the conference. He goes, Hal, go for it, man. Go for it. I scheduled 2 appointments the next morning. I go to the first one, knock on the door. She forgot I was coming. She's not there. No show. And I'm like, no, these are my last 2 chances. I go to the last appointment. I knock on the door. A woman answers the door, but she has a heavy European accent, not the lady that I talked to on the phone. I said, hey, is Mary here? She goes, no, she's 3 hours away. She forgot you were coming. I'm so sorry. Can I help you? I said, who are you? She said, I'm her sister-in-law on vacation. I go, the odds of the lady on vacation from Europe buying $3,000 of knives, when keep in mind, our biggest set was $1,500. She'd have to buy 2 of them. Like the odds of that are 0, or 1 in a billion. And so I said, no, thank you. Nothing you could do to help me. And then in my mind, what I had affirmed for 10 days, wait a minute. I committed to give it everything I had until the last possible moment. That moment has not arrived, and this nice woman from Europe has offered to help me. I said, absolutely, ma'am. You know what? Actually, could I do my presentation for you? I go and I do the presentation, and she tells me 2 things that you can't tell me this is a coincidence. 2 things. Number 1, she goes, it's so weird you're showing me knives, Hal. My husband and I were looking at a high-quality set of German knives last week, but we decided to wait until our trip to America was over to buy them. And the number 2 thing she told me, we've been looking for a gift for my brother-in-law's 50th birthday party. We want to give him something really nice, but we haven't been able to think of the perfect gift. Can any of you guess what his passion was?
Was it cooking?
It was cooking. She buys 2 Cutco Ultimate sets. And I finished the push period at $20,017. And I go to the conference. I was number 1. And I start teaching these 2 decisions to my fellow colleagues. And one after another, they go out and they have their first $20,000 push period like clockwork. And that's where I coined it. This is the miracle equation. It didn't just work for me. It's working for everyone that I taught to. It worked for Michael Jordan, you name it.
You are obviously, oh my gosh, you got a lot of energy. You're 100% positive thinking. You're full throttle. And this isn't just you on a podcast, because I know you. We spent a bunch of time together. You're like this all the time, every minute I've ever been around you. The recovery from the car accident, truly extraordinary. Did you already have the miracle equation in place? Obviously, you had achieved things at Cutco before that accident. What came first? Like you don't recover from an accident like that without having just a bulletproof mindset in place at some level already. Where did that come from, and how? And was it reinforced through the accident?
It was born in my Cutco sales training. Well, actually, let me back up a little bit further. When I was 8 years old, I woke up to the sound of my mother screaming from her bedroom, my baby, God, don't take my baby. And I ran across the hall, and she was performing CPR on my 18-month-old little baby sister, Amory. And Amory died that morning. And within 6 months, my mother was leading a support group for other parents who had lost their children to pay it forward what she had learned through her grieving process and help them. That planted the seed for me that when you experience pain in your life, tragedy, you name it, you find purpose in your pain, and it allows you to turn it into something positive and to serve other people. So that's where that seed was planted for me as a young kid. And when I came out of the car accident, out of the coma, I remember telling my dad, when my dad came in, he said, hey, the doctors are concerned because you're so positive. They think you're in denial or you're delusional. And I said, Dad, I learned this from you and Mom. Like, I've actually wanted to be a motivational speaker for the last year and a half since I started speaking to these Cutco events, but I didn't have anything that I've ever overcome significant to be able to share a message. Maybe that's why this happened. Maybe I'm supposed to overcome this so I can help other people overcome what their tragedies were. But then the bigger lesson that got me through this, Jeff, and this is really the more direct answer to your question. And I actually told my dad in that moment, I said, Dad, and remember, I live by the 5-minute rule that I learned in my Cutco training. He said, remind me again what that is. I said, the 5-minute rule that I learned on day 2 of my Cutco training is that when something goes wrong, it's okay to be negative and feel sorry for yourself, but not for more than 5 minutes. And we were literally taught, set your timer on your phone when you have and this was in the context of sales. It was if you have a no sale or a no show or a canceled order, or you don't reach your goal for the week or whatever it is, we were taught to literally set our timer on our phone for 5 minutes, and you get 5 minutes to bitch, complain, cry, vent, whatever, and feel sorry for yourself. But when the timer goes off, I was taught to say 3 very liberating words. Can't change it. It's a simple acknowledgement that I can't change what happened 5 minutes ago. So here's my choice. I can either continue to resist reality and wish it didn't happen, which I later learned through studying that, that's the source of all of our emotional pain. It's not the thing that happens to us. It's how we interpret it. It's if we resist reality, we create emotional pain for ourselves. If we accept reality, we allow ourselves to be at peace with even the most horrific experiences in our lives. Acceptance is literally the key that unlocks the door to peace, to emotional freedom. And so when I came out of the coma, I literally thought of the 5-minute rule. I went, man, I can't believe I was in a car accident. I can't believe I broke 11 bones. And they say I'm never going to walk again. And then it was very quickly within a matter of, I don't know if it was 5 minutes. It probably took me 5 days, but I finally realized I can't change it. I can't change that I was in this horrific car accident. And if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, if the doctors are right, well, then I can't change it. So now I have a choice. I can either resist reality, wish this didn't happen, live my entire life in a state of self-inflicted emotional pain, or I can accept it exactly as it is and go, this is my life. How can I be the happiest and the most grateful I've ever been while I endure the most difficult time in my life, while I recover? And how can I be optimistic and focus on what's possible instead of what I'm afraid of? And that literally is the mindset that was born out of Cutco that allowed me to get through the car accident.
Yeah, I mean, those are just incredibly powerful questions. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. There's so much to talk about. At some point, I hope to circle back to the Cutco culture and how they created that and what they're doing for this world beyond selling knives. It seems like they're just creating amazing lives and amazing belief systems in young people.
The thing is how so many people would hear what you just went through with the car accident and say, wow, that must be the most challenging thing that anyone ever has to go through in their life. That would basically, getting through that, give you a bulletproof mindset in many ways, right?
Yeah.
However, I think when you talk, and I've seen you speak, that isn't necessarily the most challenging moment that has happened in your life. And in fact, we haven't even really scratched the surface of your framework, the Miracle Morning, which actually was birthed out of a completely different moment, right?
Yeah, Miracle Morning was born. So the car accident was December 3rd, 1999, which means, I just had my 26-year anniversary a couple weeks ago. In 2007, 2008, in that range, right, the U.S. economy starts to tank, and rumblings on the news of, what may be coming down the pipe. And I was a delusional optimist where I'm just like, I don't listen to the news. I don't watch the news. I create my own economy. And it was really, a bit of delusion, because it's like, no, there's actually cause and effect. And I was a coach at the time. I had hit Hall of Fame with Cutco. And that was kind of like, okay, I've hit Hall of Fame. I want to become an entrepreneur and start my own business. So I started coaching salespeople, entrepreneurs, life coaching, you name it. And I had built my business from, $0 to I think $80,000 a year in that first year, going into my second year. And it's like I was, and I was trying to go, okay, I want to get over my first 6-figure, or what are my first 6-figure years as an entrepreneur. I had done it in Cutco. But all of a sudden, I have a coaching client cancel, my first ever coaching client say, hey, Hal, my business is down because of the economy. I need to cancel my coaching. I can't afford it. I said, no problem. I don't take it personally. I just understand it's a financial decision. But it was a little bit, oh man, that's my first ever client that I lost, one-on-one coaching. All right, 5-minute rule, can't change it, move on. However, over the next few months, I lost over half of my clients and I was signing no one new. And therefore I lost over half of my income. I could not pay my mortgage. I started living on credit cards. And so like millions of Americans, the 2008 financial crisis was my own, financial crisis. And so it was a 6-month downward spiral where my house went into foreclosure. I went from being a Dave Ramsey, paid off the credit cards every month, debt-free, to having $52,000. So $8,000 a month was going on my credit card just to pay for groceries. And I got very depressed. Like I did not know how to handle like this quicksand, this, just declining, getting worse and worse, and not having hope for the future, being really scared into the trajectory I was going into. And I called a buddy of mine, John Berghoff. John Berghoff, Chris, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I actually briefly coached with John. He's awesome. Yeah,
Cutco legend. Yes, one of my best friends. And my wife said, "Call John, get some advice, sweetheart. I know you're struggling." And John turned me on to a Jim Rohn audio, bringing Jim Rohn in again. And he said, "Hal, I called John and I said, John, I haven't told anybody this, man. I am struggling financially. I don't know what to do. I need help." And he said, "Listen to this Jim Rohn audio." I go, "Will it teach me how to make money? Because that's why I'm calling you right now. Like, I need to make money." He said, "No, it'll teach you how to become the person that you need to do whatever you want, including making money." I'm like, whatever. Okay. So I listened to the Jim Rohn audio, and this single quote, and if you're listening or watching, like, grab a pen, write this down, because this is really a foundational quote for the Miracle Morning and to my life in general. Jim Rohn said, "Your levels of success will seldom exceed your levels of personal development." I'll say it again. Your levels of success in every area of life, right, will seldom exceed your level of personal development. And when I heard that, I immediately quantified it. I went, okay, let me like assess what Jim just said. On a scale of 1 to 10, I want level 10 success in terms of I want to be happy, fulfilled. I want to be financially secure. I want level 10 in every area of my life. I want to achieve my full potential. But then I got to ask myself, well, if my level of success won't exceed my level of personal development, what's my level of personal development? And I actually had to Google, what is personal? Like, how do you define that? It's kind of a vague term. And the way that I would define it now is the way you measure your level of personal development. You can all do this right now. We can all agree we all want level 10 success. How you measure your level of personal development is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being dialed in. How dialed in are your daily habits and rituals for personal growth and development that are enabling you to develop yourself into the level 10 version of you that is capable of sustaining and achieving the level 10 success that you want? Your mindset, your habits, your beliefs, on and on and on, your physical energy. And so my answer to that question was, I want level 10 success, but my level of personal development is like at a 2, like maybe a 3. Like, yeah, I read here and there. I usually don't finish the books I'm reading. I'm all over. I have ADD. I'm all over the place. And so my epiphany was, I've got to figure out what the world's most successful people do for personal development. And I'm going to combine the most effective practices. I was thinking like 1 or 2, maybe 3 practices. I ended up with 6, but I'm going to do this every day so that I can accelerate my personal development to become that level 10 version of myself as fast as possible, because I was desperate. I was tired of struggling. And so I ended up with 6 practices. These are now known as the SAVERS. That's the acronym. SAVERS. That stands for silence. There are over 1,400 scientific studies proving the benefits of meditation, the psychological benefits, the physiological benefits, and you can even say the spiritual benefits. So meditation, prayer, starting your day with silence. The A in SAVERS is for affirmations, and not the goofy affirmations that you've heard, like, I'm a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly and in abundance. No, my affirmations formula that I teach in the book, step 1, affirm what you're committed to. Step 2, affirm why it is a must for you. What are the reasons that will fuel your drive to do whatever it takes, even on days you don't feel like it? And step 3, affirm which specific actions you will take and when. And so that formula, affirming what you're committed to, why it's a must, and what actions you'll take, think of it this way. What you affirm repeatedly becomes your inner reality. So by affirming it each day, you're strengthening your commitment, you're strengthening your why, and you're strengthening your clarity to know exactly what you're going to do and when you're going to do it to ensure that you follow through. That affirmations formula, I've applied to beating cancer. I've applied to selling 1 million copies of the Miracle Morning book. And the reason I'm spending a little more time on it than the rest of the savers, because I believe affirmations are the single most important and effective practice of the Miracle Morning. And the other savers, they really just support putting you in a peak physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state so you can live in alignment with what you're affirming every single day. The V is for visualization. The E is for exercise. The R is for reading. And the final S is for scribing, which is a fancy word for journaling, but the J would have made the acronym awkward. So I got a thesaurus and we got scribing. But I'm gonna quote Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki is one of the biggest advocates for the Miracle Morning. He's read the book 3 times. He's had me on Rich Dad Radio, and he said, Hal, you named the book correctly, calling it the Miracle Morning. I said, why? He said, because every successful person on the planet swears by at least 1 or 2 of the savers, maybe 3 at the most. He said, but I've been doing the Miracle Morning for 3 months now. I've experiencing miracles in my marriage, in my business, and in my health. He was down like 20 pounds since he started the Miracle Morning. He goes, you called the book, you named it properly, because when you combine all 6 of these ancient best practices, people experience miracles in the way that I would define it, which are these extraordinary results that you couldn't have anticipated, ahead of time.
So much about that is incredible in terms of the ability for you to take control back in many senses. I feel like a lot of people feel out of control, especially nowadays where there's so many macro level conditions, but this practice of bringing some semblance of impact every day, every morning to your routine. I know a little bit about your story. You would wake up, and you probably still do. I don't know. Do you still do the 5 a.m. wake up and doing it really early before everybody else? Because I remember you were always the advocate of like, wake up early, wake up early, wake up early.
Yeah.
And I know many successful people talk about waking up early, right? Or an hour before you do. Can you talk a little bit about just even the practicality around waking up early? Because I know a lot of people, that's a barrier for them around creating a morning routine is like, how do I'm not a morning person. I don't wake up early. That's, can I do miracle afternoon? Like, is that functional? How does that work?
It's a great question. So the first thing I'll say is you don't have to be a morning person to do the Miracle Morning, because it's not about waking up early. It's about waking up better. Meaning it's, even if you're only waking up 15 minutes earlier, like there's a chapter in the book called the 6-minute Miracle Morning. And I don't recommend that you limit yours to 6 minutes, but on those days where you're pressed for time, you can literally do 1 minute of silence. Thank you, God. Whether you're praying or if you're an atheist, you're just meditating, right? You're just sitting and calming your nervous system. There are, again, mental clarity benefits. There are physiological benefits. You're lowering your cortisol levels. 1 minute in silence. Then you pull out your affirmations that I guide you how to write in the book, right? And you affirm the most important thing you're committed to for the day, why it's a must for you, and which actions you're going to take and when. That only takes you 60 seconds. Then you visualize, you mentally rehearse yourself doing that thing that you just affirmed. Right now, you're simply creating continuity. And okay, I just affirmed the words. Now I'm going to see myself making those phone calls, going for that run, having that difficult conversation, whatever it is. Then you exercise 60 seconds of jumping jacks. The blood is flowing to your brain. You're thinking clear. You have more energy. You pull out your book, whether it's the original Miracle Morning updated and expanded edition or the Miracle Morning After 50 that came out yesterday, either one. If you're under 50, get the original. If you're after 50, get this one. But you literally read a page, right? It only takes one idea to read your life. One of the reasons that people don't change their lives when they read books is because they get a bazillion ideas and they don't actually implement them. The beauty of the Miracle Morning book, and it really goes to answer your question, Chris, about being a morning person, is my biggest insecurity as an author when I wrote the Miracle Morning book is how am I going to convince someone that has a deep rooted belief that says, I'm not a morning person, never been one, tried it, don't like it, don't want to become, right? So because that was my underlying, how am I going to address that? The Miracle Morning book really holds someone's hand psychologically and emotionally from not a morning person, don't want to do it. Okay, it makes sense. Maybe. Okay, but how do I make it easy? And I like the way I tell people is do a 30-day challenge. The whole book culminates in doing a Miracle Morning 30-day challenge and setting them up to make it as easy as possible, including your first Miracle Morning, you just do one of the savers, right? You literally can wake up and just keep reading the book. You're like, cool, I woke up 10 minutes earlier. That wasn't that hard. And I read, and now I feel more empowered. And then when you get to the chapter in the book on silence, you add silence into your next Miracle Morning. And you're like, okay, it still only takes me like 5-10 minutes. This is easy. And then you add visualization. And so what's happening is instead of going from I'm not a morning person to I'm going to be part of the 5 a.m. club and wake up, like this is crazy. You're literally just baby stepping your way into it. And all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, you're like, dude, I'm a morning person. Like I've been waking up, first it was 10 minutes earlier. Then I did 15. Then I did 20. Now I'm doing 30. Like I feel great. Right. So that's really it, is the book holds someone's hand through that whole process. And the app, by the way, the Miracle Morning app is our most requested resource that finally came out a couple of years ago. And that's kind of nice because someone can literally push play. They can wake up all groggy and be like, I don't even have the energy to do a Miracle Morning. And then they just push play and then they listen. They're like, oh, and it just guides you through your entire Miracle Morning. And you can track your savers every day. So it gives you that, like, that gamification of like getting your streaks going and that kind of thing. So that's another resource for people.
I just bought the Miracle Morning After 50 while we're talking. I'm stoked. I got the Kindle version, so I've got it immediately.
Awesome, Jeff. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
No, how many total copies of the whole franchise of all the Miracle Mornings are you?
How many books are there? Or how many copies have we sold?
How many? Both.
So there's roughly 12 to 15 books because there's some like workbooks. So, but it's in that range. And then it's the Miracle Morning for real estate agents, the Miracle Morning for salespeople, the Miracle Morning for parents and families, the Miracle Morning for writers, you name it. So there's a whole series. This is the first series book we've done in 6 years, though. I had kind of put a pause on the series to focus on other projects. And then Dwayne J. Clark, who is the founder of Aegis Living, he's revolutionized caring for like longevity. That's his expertise. And he approached me in 2020 and said, Hal, Miracle Morning changed my life. I'm in my early 60s. And he said, and I care for, he goes, I have a senior living community. I think people over 50 in the second half of their life, they need the Miracle Morning because it gives you purpose. It increases your health, your energy, your motivation, all those things. And so he and I, it took us almost 4 years to finally write this thing. And then 4 million copies roughly is how many we've sold of all of the books.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You're just an advocate for humans and helping them achieve. And I think from what I've seen, it's you've faced these challenges and it's given you this inspiration to know that people can decide about the life they're going to lead. Even if we look at your affirmations, the first step is, what are you going to commit to? Why does it matter? And what are the actions, roughly, I'm paraphrasing, what are the actions it's going to take to get there? And it's almost like every single day, the savers and particularly the affirmations, you're selling yourself on the future you're going to create. Our team, we teach people how to launch, and it could be their products, their services, their programs, whatever, but it's really how to launch their lives. I think marketing we all have to market to not only our future clients, but also to ourselves. And so, I think we're sort of speaking the same language in many, many ways. So how do you think about selling, both selling to yourself, which is what I see what Miracle Morning does, is you're selling to yourself every day that I'm going to create something amazing, and then selling to others. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll track back to Cutco. When I started Cutco, I had zero experience in sales. And on my second day of training, and this partially answers a question you asked earlier, which is like for someone that, is listening to this, they're like, oh, but I don't have what it takes, or they have like self-doubt. I was a very average kid growing up. I got bad grades. I was always in trouble, class clown, and on my second day of training, when we learned about this thing called the Cutco Fast Start record, we learned that, hey, if you sell $1,000 at Cutco, you get this knife. And we're like, ooh, we get a free knife. Awesome. If you sell 2,000, you get this better knife. We're like, oh, I'm going to sell it, right? So they have this whole thing, and they go, and Chris is nodding because he was a manager. He taught this every week to reps. But it goes up and up and up. And then he gets to the top level. He goes, if you sell, 10,000, you get this knife. And then guess what? You get everything underneath. And we're like, oh my gosh, we got to go for it. But then he says, there's one more level. He says, if you break the record, the most anyone has ever sold in the Western region, that was for, my part of the company was in the Western United States, $12,000. And actually he said the record was broken in 50 years. It was broken last month by a gal that lives an hour and a half south of here. And she sold $12,300 and something dollars. And he said, if you break that, you get a limo ride, you get skydiving. I mean, there's all these things. And I'm like, this is awesome. And in that moment, as a kid who was average, mediocre, did not believe in myself, was not an achiever. And I'm speaking to anyone listening or watching this that's like, I don't know. I have a lot of self-doubt. I struggle with self-confidence, or I've tried and I've failed, or I'm getting older, whatever your excuses are, right? I had all of them. I call it rear view mirror syndrome, where you check the rear view mirror, you're like, there's nothing in my past that says I can do what I want to do. I got no evidence of, this is new for me, right? But what happened is the belief that formed in that moment, unconsciously, I went, why not me? If that girl an hour and a half south of here could sell $12,300 in 10 days, why not me? And I want to encourage anyone watching or listening to this that stop separating yourself from the Jeff Walkers and the Dan Walkers and, Chris. I mean, like this, what we tend to do as humans is we create separation, go, oh, they're better than me. They're smarter than me. They're younger than me. They're more experienced than me. You name it. We find a reason why we're not as good. We're not as capable. And you need to flip that and look for the evidence, which is, oh, if that human being did this thing, that's evidence of what's possible for me. And that belief was born on that second day of training when I learned about the Fast Start record. And I went to my manager after training. I said, Jesse, and there were like 25 people in my training class. I waited till they all left. And I went to Jesse. I said, Jesse, I want to break the Fast Start record. I want to sell $12,400 or whatever. He said, Hal, I hear that every week and no one ever does it. And I got deflated. I thought he was going to be excited for me. I go, okay. He goes, if you want to do it, you can. You're just as capable of that girl or anybody. But he said, you have to be willing to commit at a level you've never been committed before. And he said, you're going to face rejection. You're going to feel like quitting at times. It's going to be hard. He goes, it's one thing to sit here in this safe office and say, you want to break the record. He said, but it's another thing when you go out there and you have 3 people in a row tell you no, and one's mean, and you get rejected. And so I went, okay. He goes, if you're willing to commit at a level you've never committed for 10 days, no matter what your results are along the way. Now that I think about it, in some ways, the miracle equation, it wasn't coined, but it was really born in this moment when he said, if you'll commit to give it everything you have for 10 days, I said, I'll do it. He said, I'll guide you. I'll lead you. He goes, in fact, he said, I want you to call me before every morning, check in the morning when you wake up, check in between every appointment, and check in every night before bed. I want to manage your mindset for these 10 days. Will you commit to that? I said, yes. So I'm getting extra special attention, and I admire this guy. I'm like, do you remember Jesse Levine, Chris? Did you know Jesse?
Yeah, I saw him speak a few times at our SLCs, right? So,
yeah. So Jesse, and he, by the way, he was the number 1 manager in the company that year, the first manager to ever do $1 million. So I was very blessed. Like I can only take so much of the credit. Like if I did not have him as a mentor, I wouldn't have done what I did. So my very first day I go out and I go 0 for 3. 3 appointments. I thought I needed to sell 1,200 per day, 1,300 per day to hit my goal. And I went $0 on day one. And I was depressed. I was defeated. I called Jesse ready to quit. And he said, Hal, let me ask you a question. Do you want to be successful in life? I said, yeah, of course. He said, what do you think a successful person would do right now? I said, they'd probably get on the phone and schedule more appointments for tomorrow. He said, what are you going to do? I go, damn, I guess I'm going to get on the phone and schedule more appointments for tomorrow. And right, but it's such a like rhetorical yet obvious question that we can ask ourselves. Oh, I feel defeated. I feel scared. I feel, yeah. Okay. Do you want to be successful? Yes. What would a successful person do? And if you need to pick an avatar, what would Chris do? What would Dan do? What would Jeff do? What would Michael Jordan do, right? Oh, they'd keep going. They would move, they'd put the past behind them, accept where they are, and they'd keep going. And so I got on the phone. I scheduled 10 appointments the next day. I had 7 sales for $2,768. Now I'm back on track to where I need to be. And I ended up doing 62 appointments in those 10 days. And they take about an hour and a half each. So it was like 90 hours in those 10 days of work, plus driving. It was crazy. I worked from morning till night every day. And on the very last day, on the very last appointment, I broke the record. I sold $15,000 of Cutco. And Jeff, this is you'll notice I answer in story form because I'm a keynote speaker. But the answer to your question, because people said, Hal, how did you do it? How did you sell $15,000 in 10 days? I didn't use a bunch of ninja sales techniques. I used enthusiasm, genuine belief in the product I was selling, and care for the customer in front of me. Those were my 3 secrets, not to mention the miracle equation, right? Unwavering faith, extraordinary effort. That was the meta approach, was the miracle equation. But in terms of the selling, is I believed in the product I was showing. Cutco is a phenomenal product, guaranteed forever. I brought what y'all are seeing. I don't know how to be any other way, as you said, Jeff. This is how I am at dinner when I'm with my friends. They're like, Hal, quiet down. We're in a restaurant. This is all the time. I don't know how to be any other way. And so care for the customer, belief in the product, and then enthusiasm, right? Just bringing that. And that was how I sold. And then after that, I read Robert Cialdini's book, the Science of Influence. And I learned about the law of contrast, start high so you can finish higher. I learned all these sales techniques, but like those 3 components, belief in what you're selling, putting your customer first and what's best for them, not what's best for you in your bank account or your quotas or your sales goals. And then number 3, enthusiasm, genuine enthusiasm. And I used to always joke I was like the Tasmanian devil, where I'd go in, I'd cut a bunch of stuff and talk really fast and be excited, and they would not know what hit them. They're like, yeah, I guess I'll take the big set. I don't know, sure. They're like, he was talking so fast, I didn't even know half of what he said, but he seems excited about these knives. Let's go.
So much of what you just said echoes for me, because I lived it as the manager and as the sales rep and all the fast start stuff. And one of the very common things we would say as managers is that people's first sales were bought. They weren't sold. Right. And so I think a lot of people, when they start something new, they're not good at it. We aren't good at launching the first time we launch. We're not necessarily good at, guitar when we first pick up the guitar. Right. We have to. And so much of what we train people to do is to guide people through those introductory steps, because a lot of our clients are people who are teaching their zone of genius. Right. And part of one of the main objectives that you have to do is keep people inspired, right? And keep people's mindset in the positive frame of mind as they go through those beginning stages of learning and growth. And when you're trying, and part of what I think really resonates with your story is when you're trying to do something big, life tends to test you or will test you, right?
100%.
Yeah. As soon as your level of commitment goes higher, the level of challenge will show up. It always goes that way. And I saw it countless times as the manager, hearing people like Hal who said, I'm going to break the record, right? Or I'm going to be this person. And then them realizing when they get out into the real world, some people think that moment of commitment is the work. That's not really the work. It's the effort that's to maintain that level of commitment through all the challenges that is the work. And yeah, I just think there's so much in there that can be resonant for our entrepreneurs, for our business people, for people who are already experts in teaching others on how to remind themselves of that beginner's mind and what people are going through within that story. So thank you for sharing that.
What can you share about the culture at Cutco, how they created what they created? This is for both Chris and Hal. Because you two, there is definitely, I see common themes in the both of you and in other folks I know have come through Cutco of, there's a personal development piece. I mean, you're asking kids to go out and walk up the door, knock on doors. I guess you probably make appointments ahead of time, but you're asking people to walk into a stranger's home and start pulling out knives and sell those knives to folks. Yeah, like how do they create that culture or and instill that culture?
I'll give a short answer, and then Chris, as a manager, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But yeah, they made it fun, first of all, right? So they made it a fun job to work at. And it was a high energy. Most offices were a high energy culture, and then they just they made it fun, and they made it so that there were incentives. Like that was the biggest thing, right? I mean, you're so sold on the product that you were excited. Wait, if I sell $1,000, I get a Cutco trimmer. Yes, But it was everything was gamified. There were contests for everything, so you were always not focused on the rejection and fear as much as like, oh, I just got to keep going because I'm trying to reach this goal. So they always had aspirational goals that were pulling people forward versus pushing them forward to like, no, get out the door and go sell. It was like, hey, remember, I know that you really wanted to win that trip that we're offering this week, right? Oh yeah, I do. Okay, well, and then the other thing was micromanagement. It was, hey, make 10 phone calls and then call me back. So it was they'd call it waking reps up in the morning, right? Call me and check in the morning, and then they would get you fired up. So it was managing the mindset of the reps. So that was it. The culture was big, but also on the micro. And I know Chris, as a manager, right? You're talking to every rep every morning. If they don't call in by 8 a.m., you're calling them, and we call it firing them up. You're getting them excited, and then you're micromanaging. Hey, make 5 calls, call me back. Make 5 more, call me back. Great job. You're doing great. You're also encouraging them, which in their life, they might not have a lot of encouraging people in their life. So that was my experience, mostly as a rep and a little bit as a manager as well. Chris, what about you?
The way we looked at it as a manager, at least this is one of the ways and one of the things I always thought of, is that fear and excitement are very similar emotions. It's just whether or not you believe the outcome will be great or it will be bad. And so this is always the balancing act that you make, that you have to manage as a manager of your sales reps. And as a manager, you would have to remind yourself that they are in that beginner's mind. They are brand new. So reps are dumb because they don't know anything except what you teach them. They're not actually dumb. They've never done this before. They don't know anything. So you have to remind yourself that they know nothing about how it's supposed to go or what is going to happen. They're lazy because they don't necessarily they don't do anything unless they have a reason to do it. And so realize that they don't necessarily have to be lazy. They have 18 to 20 some odd years of training on how to be them before they get to you. So, you have to realize that you got to give them reasons to do stuff every single day, right? And then they're irrational. That's the other thing. Reps were irrational because they've never done this. They don't know what to expect. And so if one demo goes poorly, they rationalize out that everything is going to go poorly, right? So when you had that context as a manager, you had to be on top of their mindset on a day-to-day basis and an hour by hour basis in many cases, And so you couldn't keep fear and excitement in at the same time. You can't be afraid and excited. You're one or the other. So our job as a manager was to frame the excitement a lot, right? And there were lots of tactical ways we used to build excitement. I mean, we had this thing called a fast start contest, which is all about getting off to a fast start in your first 10 days. and we would explain it to representatives too, is like, we want you to do well your first 10 days. Why? Because if you work hard for 10 days, okay, and you sell enough to make a ton of money in your first 10 days, you're going to actually know how great this job is. You're going to have incredible confidence. You're going to learn skills for the rest of your life that are going to help set you up for success. So imagine if the next 10 days meant that the next, the next 2 months went really well. And then if these next 2 months went really well, that actually gave you the skill sets to go on and get the dream job that you really want to do. Because we know you won't work at Cutco forever, but you're here for now, for this summer, for this whatever timeline. Maybe we work with you for a long time, 10 years like me, or maybe you work with us for just a couple of months. But what if the next 10 days meant the rest of your life was set up properly? And that's where we would really get them seeing the bigger vision, that this isn't just about selling knives.
Yeah.
It's really about building who you are as a person for the rest of your life, because how you show up in these next 10 days and just even this first weekend is going to compound your success. So for the next 2 days of training, let's focus on what to do, right? And then we would do a whole opening to this training, which was all about setting them up for success. And as a manager, the main thing I would do every week was that first 2 hours of training. We would get, 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 plus people in training. And if I nailed those 2 hours, we were going to have a great week. And if I do that every single week, we're going to have a great summer. And that laid down the foundation to really get people going. And if we got them excited about this thing called a fast start, and we got them excited about the product, they didn't have to be good. They did, but if they were excited about winning this peeler, they were no longer afraid to pick up the phone. And so if you know people who are, in that fear, excitement loop, as a person who's managing others or managing those mindsets, it's really important to have the carrot, the goals, the excitement to get people going and to get them moving forward, so that and what's funny is then you create that rear view that's success. Because if you get them over that hump of making that first call, like I remember as a new representative, and I was a pretty sharp representative. I did everything my manager said, and I used to work in a factory, so I hated that job. And I'm like, I will do anything but work in that factory. So whatever this job is, my parents told me, don't do this job. It's definitely not going to work out. It's a scam, probably. Like all parents kind of say that when you say you're going to sell knives. All right. But then I was like, no, I'm not going back to that factory job. I will do anything but that. So I came in ready to learn, ready to do it. But even then, I was scared to make that first call, to just pick up the phone. And I remember just being like, having to have that psych up conversation and looking at my fast start sheet with the prizes and saying, I do really think it would be cool to win some of this stuff. Let's just try. And getting over that hump, that first call, and it wound up going well. I booked an appointment, right? Then it became evidence. And then it was much easier to keep going, So it is that managing of expectations throughout that whole beginning process. And what's funny is 2 months in, now they know they don't necessarily need you as much, but it's an investment. And I think as a manager, we were always talking to ourselves about how this is an investment in the people, right? They're like, when someone's selling $10,000 a week or $20,000 a week, like Hal, like managers help, but they're not necessarily the core factor anymore in your success. But that was, when they're new, instrumental to people being successful.
That's great. Thank you.
You can tell why Chris was a good manager.
Wow, you've just been listening to us for almost an hour. I bet you have a business idea that you want to get launched. Well, if you'd like to get some free resources and free training, go over to getyouLaunched.com and check out what we've got over there. All it needs is an email, and we'll send you out some free stuff.
So Hal, you've shared, the car accident, that incredible challenge. Then the challenge that of being an entrepreneur and having everything go sideways in 2008. The other big one we haven't heard about yet is your cancer journey. When was that, and how did you work through that?
Yeah, you'd think after the car accident that I went, it's like, all right, I faced my life or death situation. So I was 20 when the car accident happened, and at age 37, I woke up one night struggling to breathe, and that was the first. They went and they had to drain 1.5 liters of fluid from my lung at the ER, and that had to be done every other day for I think 11 days, 7 days or 11 days, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I ended up being diagnosed with a very rare and aggressive form of cancer. It's called acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So it's a blood cancer that shuts your organs down. And when I ended up at MD Anderson Cancer Hospital in Houston, because I wanted to run some tests, and immediately once they figured out what it was, they gave me, I had a 30% chance of survival. That was the best odds if I did the chemotherapy regimen. And they said if I didn't do the chemotherapy regimen, I had 1 to 2 weeks to live. They discovered that not only were my lungs collapsing and filling with fluid, my heart was on the verge of failing. I had to go into an emergency procedure where they had to jab a needle through my chest and drain a sack of fluid around my heart. And I had to sign a waiver that said, if it was a risk that they would pierce my heart and I would go into cardiac arrest, and they'd have to do open heart surgery. And then my kidneys were failing. And so that was the hardest decision I ever had to make in my life. I told the doctor, I prefer not to do chemotherapy, especially because the chemo regimen was 700 hours of chemo. Because it's such an aggressive cancer, they hit it as hard as you possibly can hit any cancer with chemo. 700 hours was and I go, I don't want to do chemo, man. That's going to kill me. That's why and I looked, the survival rate, like people die, either from the cancer or the chemo. I don't know which one is more. But I told the doctor I wanted to heal it naturally. And he said, Hal, you don't have that luxury. You have 1 to 2 weeks to live. If you don't do chemo, there's nothing natural that you can do that's going to heal you. And I didn't fully trust the doctor. I didn't know him. I just met him. I said, give me 24 hours to make a decision with my wife and talk it over and do a little research. And I went home and I just Googled holistic oncologist, best holistic oncologist. And I got on the phone with two of the most well-known holistic oncologists in America that don't just hit you with chemo. They treat the whole body, and they'll sometimes do chemo if they need to, but only as minimal. And both of them said, there's nothing we can do for you. You are at such a late stage that you only have a week or two to live. There's nothing naturally, it's not like a slow growing tumor where we can monitor it. You're on death's doorway right now. Your organs are shutting down. You have to do chemo. And so, my daughter was 7 years old at the time, and my son was 4. And to be told that if you don't start chemo, you're going to die. If you do start chemo, there's a 70% chance you're going to die. So those are your best odds. And I started chemo the next day. And I did tell my wife, who was more terrified than I was, right? So I had a couple tools in my tool belt. 5-minute rule. I can't change that I have cancer, so there's no point in wishing I didn't have cancer. The only logical choice I have is to accept I have cancer and I'm at peace with it. That's decision number 1. And then the other 2 decisions were the miracle equation. I'm going to maintain unwavering faith that I can completely heal my body, and I'm going to put forth extraordinary effort. And what that meant for me was the Western medicine, the chemo and the pharmaceutical drugs, that's a necessary evil, if you will. But I'm going to take total ownership of my health. And so I'm going to relentlessly research every holistic practice known to man, and I'm going to do all of it. And I did. I took 70 supplements a day. I did 3 coffee enemas a week, which is not comfortable when you get started. I did lymphatic massage or ozone sauna, lymphatic massage. And here's the biggest thing, and this is not hyperbole. I believe the Miracle Morning was instrumental in saving my life, because all of a sudden, the savers, the lifesavers, these 6 practices, all 6 of them were focused on healing cancer. So the R in Savers is for reading. I bought books like Radical Remission, Chris Beat Cancer. I bought all these books on how do you heal your body naturally from cancer? How do you boost the immune system? And let me just say this, y'all. The body is designed to heal itself. If you don't believe that, give yourself a little cut on the finger. Watch what the body does. The pharmaceutical industry would have you believe, no. You can only we can heal you. Only pharmaceutical drugs can heal you. So I'm a big believer in self-healing also because of my car accident and walking again. So it's like I had that reference point. And once again, I applied the miracle equation. My miracle morning, my affirmations were this. I'm actually going to recite the affirmations for you right now. I am committed to beating cancer and living to be 100 plus years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there is no other option. That was step one, what I was committed to. Step two, why it's a must. I had 5 reasons. I had why I was committed to beating cancer for Ursula, because I promised her forever and a day. Why I was committed to beating cancer for my kids. Why I was committed to beat cancer for my parents, because they did not deserve to lose another child after my sister died in my mother's arms. For myself, for other people, I had 5 compelling reasons that when I felt like giving up, which I did many times, I was on death's doorway. I was a shell of who I am now. I mean, I went from 167 in weight to 127 after chemo. I was this close to death many times. And that miracle equation, that miracle morning and that miracle equation kept me going and moving forward. And I'm grateful to say that I'm alive. And I do want to mention, you can watch this journey for free on YouTube or on Amazon Prime, the Miracle Morning documentary, the Miracle Morning movie. We were 2 years into filming it. Mel Robbins is in the movie, Robin Sharma, Lewis Howes, Robert Kiyosaki. It's me and a bunch of regular folks in the Miracle Morning community and how it transformed their life. And then I got diagnosed with cancer, and I called our director, Nick Conadera. I said, Nick, you'll never believe this, man. I'm starting chemo today. The movie's on hold. I've got to focus on surviving for my family. That's all that matters. And he said, Hal, we talked for a while. He's a friend. And he said, this is the movie. With your permission, I want to film your cancer journey. And this is what the movie's becoming. You don't decide what a documentary is ahead of time. You don't write the documentary, you film the documentary. And this is real life. And thank God that he did that and had that foresight, and that my wife signed off on it. I wasn't sure if she was going to, because when you're watching the Miracle Morning movie, the first 60 minutes are all about the Miracle Morning, and you're hearing from Mel Robbins and all these amazing people and how their morning routines change their life. And then it's me on a cell phone doing a selfie for my friends and family saying, I'm in the hospital. They don't know what's wrong with me. They're running tests. I can't breathe. And then the last 30 minutes of the movie are me using my Miracle Morning to fight for my life and beat cancer. And it's an intimate journey, man. You see me bawling my eyes out at the lowest points in my life.
Wow. I'm definitely going to check that out. Wow. Amazing. So, Hal, this has been fantastic. I know you've gotten out at some point here. You've been super generous. I know I actually have an out in 7 minutes that I didn't realize, because I appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
And it seems weird after hearing about your cancer journey to go to taco questions, but
You can't leave out the taco questions.
I'm feeling the taco questions are calling.
Let's go.
We can do a few very quick taco questions here. That would be amazing. 2-minute taco break. So they'll get steadily spicier as we go along. But our first taco question, we ask every guest, hard shell or soft shell?
Ooh, in between, like the soft shell, but that's like it's like it's brown and crispy on the outside. Yeah, that's how my mom made them.
That's a great answer.
High quality answer.
Okay, mild, medium, or spicy tacos?
Medium.
Would you put guacamole or no guacamole?
Usually I'd go with guac, yeah.
All right, awesome. Let's say I have a struggling taco business, all right, and it's really on the cusp of bankruptcy. If you could give me one piece of amazing business advice, what would you tell me?
It's get the tacos in the hands of as many people as you possibly can. And if your tacos are as good as they should be, and you'd hope they are, it's going to spread via word of mouth, man. That's it. When the Miracle Morning came out, I had a goal of give away 1,000 copies as fast as I possibly can. And so I was self-published. I printed 1,000 copies and I handed them out. I was like, the rapper Too Short. That's where I got the idea from. Too Short used to give CDs out of his trunk when he was getting started. So yeah, that's it. Give away your tacos and get the word of mouth buzz going.
If you had a taco that allowed you to go back in time to your younger self and say something, would you eat the taco? And what would you say if you did?
I would eat the taco. I would trust my older self. And what I would say to my younger self is, hey, man, just enjoy every moment. There's going to be ups and downs in this life, but I think you're wasting your life if you're allowing the things that are out of your control to detrimentally affect your mental and emotional well-being. Just accept the things you can't change, be at peace with life exactly as it is, and enjoy every moment of this one life that you've been blessed to live.
Well, that'll conclude the 2-minute taco break. Thank you so much for those. Hal, this is so awesome to reconnect with you and just to be here on Dare to Launch and hear your story. I know it's going to impact and inspire a ton of people. We always finish off these interviews because most of our listeners they're daring to launch their own products, business, their next thing. And so I wanted to ask you, why should people dare to launch?
Because you miss all the shots that you don't take, right? Wayne Gretzky famously said that, is that, I think what prevents people from launching is the fear of failure. But the real failure is never launching, and it's taking the risk, giving it a shot and failing forward, right? Which is meaning you might fail along the way. I've had many business ventures and things that I tried where they didn't go the way that I wanted. Just like Michael Jordan, he believed he'd make every shot that he took, but he missed a ton of shots, including a lot of game winners, but he kept taking shots. He kept going for it. And so that's it. The dreams that you have within you that you might even be afraid to write on paper, they're just waiting for you to launch, to take that risk, to iterate along the way. And if you make a mistake, if you fall, just get back up and keep going, keep launching.
Love it. Well, thank you, Hal, for being on Dare to Launch. And for our launch family, thanks again for tuning in, listening, and we hope this conversation inspires you to dare to launch.
Hey, Launch family, thanks again for listening. And if you haven't yet, please hit subscribe. It is something that really helps grow the channel, but also will keep you informed of new awesome interviews and clips that we keep putting out. The bigger the channel gets and the bigger the show gets, the bigger the guests will get on the show and the bigger and better our content will be for you. So we're in this together. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you on the next episode.